if you're sick of me talking about guns, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I'm sick of talking about guns too. I'm sick of hearing about guns and gun-related violence. I'm not gonna mention the most recent incident because it doesn't matter. I'm gonna try and make this dose as generic as possible so I can just post this link every time there's another shooting. And there's gonna be plenty of opportunities for that, because Americans are completely unwilling to do anything other than shrug their shoulders and say, well, nothing we can do about it. Except in every other country, they have done something about it, clearly, because the United States is the only developed nation where this happens with this amount of frequency. And every time, pro-gun people have the exact same arguments, the exact same metaphors, similes, analogies. In fact, Tucker Carlson, Fox News correspondent who's also worked for MSNBC, CNN, basically all the 24-hour channels have put up with him for some length of time or another, trotted this old gem out. When there's a drunk driving accident, you don't ban cars, you try to prevent drunk people from driving them. And yet, when anyone even brings up the idea of gun regulation and control, not banning guns, we're not talking about that yet, people still scream, my rights, my rights. Let's use the famous drunk driving analogy. You're right, you don't ban cars. But think about how much it takes to legally drive a car. You have to get a license. In order to do so, you need to prove to someone not just that you're old enough to drive, but that you're capable. Depending on where you live, this can be a pretty long process. You have to get your learner's permit. Then you have to drive with someone in the passenger seat. Then you have a number of restrictions put on as to when you can drive and what roads you're allowed on. And finally, you have to then demonstrate to the government that you can drive by passing a test. This process takes months, in some areas years, before you're allowed to operate a motor vehicle by yourself. During this time, you certainly can't purchase a car. I mean, you could, but you can't drive it on your own. I don't know about there, but in Canada, you need proof of a full license and you need insurance before you can drive the car off the lot, or the dealership could be in huge shit. All of these things are regulations in some sort of attempt to create safer drivers, because the old system was you went to the DMV, paid your money, drove around the block, and you were licensed to drive a car. And it shows in that per capita, there were far more automotive-related deaths years ago than there are today in the United States. Yes, people still die, but the number is going down. And funny enough, no one screams, my freedoms are being taken away, when they introduce some new legislation regarding driving. Why? Well, because the right to drive isn't in the Constitution. The right to own guns is. Except, most people who quote that have no fucking idea what they're talking about. Ask someone to quote the Second Amendment word for word, and they'll probably say something like, we the people have the right to keep and bear arms. Which is not what it says. What it says is, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia. This part is constantly ignored. We'll even ignore the idea that it was meant to be for members of a recognized militia only. Let's pretend this really means Johnny Fuckface should be allowed to own a gun. Well-regulated. It's not. Oh, there are background checks in some states and you have to wait 3 days to get your assault rifle. Unless, of course, you just go to a gun show, which, look, one's happening in the back of this store right now. You don't need to do half of the shit you need to do to get a driver's license in order to own a gun. In many places in the States, you don't need a license. There's no such thing as gun insurance. You don't need to prove to anyone that you're capable of handling a gun in a safe manner. All legally owned cars are registered with a government agency. Is every legally owned firearm registered? I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is no. But again, forcing people to do that? All sorts of excuses not to. The biggest of which, my freedoms! Tucker Carlson says places like Australia, Canada, and parts of Europe have no freedom because we have strict regulations or outright ban the ownership of certain types of guns or all guns. Japan, too. I'll toss them in because they're a great example. Japan has a little more than 1/3 of the US's population crammed into like 1/100th of the space. And in 2008, they had 11 firearm-related deaths. 11. But it's a free country. They hold free elections where you won't be killed for voting the wrong way. They have a free market economy. You can pursue whatever career choices you wish to make. And guns are banned there. In Canada, guns are difficult to get. And in 2013, there were 131 firearm-related homicides. 131, and we touched the border of the United States. We're practically the same country. But I feel pretty free. I can vote. I can say what I want, do what I want, eat, drink, watch whatever I want, bang whoever I want as long as it's consensual. If I was a woman, I can get an abortion whenever I want. Maybe they have a buy 9, get the 10th one free deal. That all seems pretty free to me. The only thing I can't do, go down to the store, say, 1 gun please, slap down money, and walk out with a shiny new death tool. And I'm okay with that. In the land of the truly free, though, the United States of America, there were over 11,000 homicides by firearm in 2013. 11,208 people died because someone intentionally shot them. That's not including suicides or accidentals. Those are premeditated or heat-of-the-moment murders. Everyone says, well, if you ban guns or make them harder to get, criminals will be the only ones who can get them. This is, however, hypothetical. It's based on nothing but fear that the only reason people aren't busting into your homes to kill you right now is because you might be standing in the doorway waiting with your assault rifle to protect your family. It can't be based on any real-world stats because, as we've shown, Canada and Japan both have super low gun murder rates. But Americans are like a child at a buffet. They're unwilling to try anything new. They just want the same thing they got last time. It's not a slippery slope. You won't give up guns or have them regulated, and then the next thing you know, jackbooted stormtroopers are gonna tear through your house and toss you and your family in a bunker 20 stories underneath Montana. It's funny because they always mention, look what happened in Germany in the 30s and 40s, as well as in the Soviet Union and in Cambodia when they banned citizens from having guns. You know what happened? Genocide happened. But then when you mention how gun control works in other countries, they're very quick to point out, yeah, but we're not the same as them. So, you're not like other countries, but you're worried you are like Nazi Germany or Pol Pot's Cambodia? They think the worst will happen, but the worst is already here, in the form of every asshole in the country having such easy access to guns that that's how they decide to solve their perceived problems. And arming everyone in a school or a movie theater or wherever would just lead to more hair-trigger incidents. Angry assholes solving arguments with bullets. Shh! Stop talking during the movie! Fuck you, I paid for my ticket. I can do what I want. We know humans love the easiest solution available. That's why we eat fast food instead of cook, drive instead of walk or bike, watch the movie when it comes out instead of read the book. Well, these people would just use something else, knives or bats or whatever. I say, let them try. You let me know when 10 to 20 people are killed in a mass stabbing or bludgeoning. In fact, in a school in Pennsylvania in 2014, 21 people were injured in a mass stabbing. No deaths. Not one. But you know what? No matter what side of the argument you land on, you have to agree that something has to be done. It doesn't matter if you don't believe that it has anything to do with guns, even though, regardless of motive, that's almost always the weapon of choice in the US. You realize something has to be done. So let them try something, even if it means getting a gun is, at the very least, as difficult as being allowed to drive a car. If it doesn't work, you get to say I told you so while you take part in the well-regulated part of the Constitution. Just think. It'll give you something to do during the waiting period.